loud. Yes, indeed. Careful what you say. Recorded forever. All right. Good. Okay. Order. What else you got? What else are you seeing or has been part of the insight?
Justice that are very tied to the culture and the way people live their time.
Okay.
Like a bit differently to others.
Right.
But you got to have to take context for you have to take context for into account.
Yeah. You certainly have to take the context into account, but that there is unmistakable overarching sense of God's concern for justice. Yeah. All right. Great. Yeah. Yes.
Give us the chapter we're doing.
Oh yeah, sure. We're on what I was told is we're at 25 verse 31. We're going to talk about lampstands. Yep. Yeah. Are there folks here who are really into all the details of the tabernacle, or folks who are decorators or have an eye for that kind of thing in this group? Well, this is a pragmatic group, huh? Just function. Yeah. Okay. What's that? Many jewels. Yeah. Involved. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. My mother-in-law is actually really gets excited about the tabernacle. And I know she's done some study and some, there are sort of pictorial, you can find lots of places now on the internet, of course, but kind of pictorial references to what it might have looked like, sort of a thing. Did you talk at all about the movement from kind of the mountain to the tabernacle as far as God's presence with the people? We talk about that at all? Okay. That might be good as kind of an intro to what we're going to be looking at, and might enliven it a little bit, because this next part, these next several chapters and there's kind of a middle part with the golden calf that gets pretty exciting. But this next part might be a little tedious at times, or why we have to know 6 petals on this onyx and this thing. There are some words in here I don't even know. Maybe you can explain them to me. But and for me, I don't know, maybe some of you are, especially with engineering minds, can kind of visualize this. I have to sort of see it. I'm more of a visual person. Show me what it looks like, and then I can kind of read it. But yeah, so our different learning styles may come up and influence as we go here. But we might take a little bit of a look at what this overall kind of thing means, when it was written. Did you talk about when it was written at all? When we think this part was written? Okay. Yeah. All right. So we'll maybe get into that a little bit too. On numbers? Just
all the way through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you have numbers of curtains and how they're stitched together. You have numbers on lots of different things. Yeah, for sure. And even there'll be in these texts, there'll be 7, I think it's divine acclamation, or not acclamations, but divine kind of statements. So where God is speaking. And if we think about the tabernacle in kind of the light of creation, you think of the 7 days of creation. This has a sense of new creation in the midst of chaos. So here are the people in the wilderness, right, wandering around. They're in the midst of a chaotic world, and the tabernacle brings a kind of order in the midst of chaos. So all this detail that we're having here, as it might seem really exciting to some and tedious to others, think about it as a sense of order in the midst of chaos. And then you said you talked about when this was written. This section was written 25 to 42, I think it is, something like that. What do you what did you talk about as far as that, or with Kim maybe? So when it was written, you don't remember? Okay. So most scholars think that this part was written in all of its detail, probably in the exilic period. So when the people, many years later, when the people were taken into exile, that this detail was kind of written and put into this up to this part of Exodus, or at least it was, written down then, and then as the scriptures came from oral tradition to written tradition, or kind of a mix of both, that was put in there. Why would it be important to have all of this detail when you are in exile? Do you think?
Obvious idea.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect answer. Any other thoughts or guesses?
You wanted everything made a certain way.
Yeah,
You have to have it written down, otherwise you get a lot of people together.
right. Yeah, yeah. And the detail helps with kind of a protection against idolatry. These are the particular ways. So the stuff can be an idolatry in itself, as we see Jesus arguing with the Pharisees, but you're not supposed to do that on the Sabbath. And Jesus says, hey, Sabbath was made for us, right? So this gives me a great lens or a sort of a hall pass with the Pharisees towards Jesus, because they're trying to keep this order, right? And that order was important. Yeah. So thoughts on, yeah. And then you had a hand too.
Keep their identity.
Keep their identity as people. Yeah, right. As they're pulled into the chaos of everything, of political, religious, this force around them being absolute, being overtaken, but then being the absolute minority religiously in a foreign land. This tabernacle, and what it looked like and what it was very, very important to them. Did you have a comment over here or a couple comments over here? Yeah. Yeah.
That is, people talk about America as the melting pot,
Uh-huh.
but there's problems with immigration when you take a whole lot of people from one area and put them into another,
Mhm.
because then among themselves they kind of they still keep the old
Mhm.
ways that they consider.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's basically just transporting people.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the melting pot is like you do it incrementally and they're spread out enough so that they blend into society. And so if you have a situation like that, you're really threatened to losing your culture. And so I can see it being that much more critical to record things so that you do not.
Yeah. Well, and for the Israelites being pulled into, they didn't immigrate in there, but were pulled into, they were, especially the powerful, were forced into exile. They needed to keep that culture. And so they did have those practices, and those were important to them. I think about it this way. If I remember being in the hospital when I was 13 years old, and I couldn't eat. And as a 13-year-old kid, not eating is not good. I got something, they never figured it out, but I'm sure it was some kind of waterborne bacteria. But we drank bad water at camp, and the water broke down, and they took us to a cemetery to drink the water there, without thinking about the fact that it wasn't potable water. So I like to say I almost died of something somebody did die of. I know it sounds terrible, but that's, yeah, who knows what it was. But I would just focus all day on a Snickers bar or on a Mabe's Pizza. Mabe's was this pizza place in Decorah. Or I would get these I can still remember what that felt like to absolutely crave. And in the exile, absolutely craving your identity and thinking of all of the details and what that would taste like, and kind of almost tasting it yourself, help them to kind of preserve that through that time. I've said this probably in here and certainly in other places many times before, and Pastor Bill probably has as well. It's a miraculous thing that the people of God survived through exilic periods and other kinds of periods of domination, because even those that took them into exile, these powerful worldly nations, powerful in the world in that area at the time, their religious practices are completely extinct at this, now. How was it that this ragtag, at the time, kind of beaten down, temple destroyed, ragtag group of people were able to persevere in their faith through all of that? Some people may explain it by all kinds of social, political, this, that, and the other things, but I see it as nothing other than otherworldly presence of God, of the true God, maintaining that thread of promise throughout. So these details are important through that. Yeah.
Of God. We had specific people do specific things. And the fact that they were able to do these things
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Right.
they, you know, you have to give them the ability to know how to do something.
Yeah,
How they-
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Some of it
for
was
sure.
Some of the artisans and whatnot, workings, like God put his spirit upon them.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that the case?
Yeah, yeah, the call, I mean, it goes back to God's word accomplishes what it sets out to do. And so that word, that call. Mhm.
We think, today, we think that vocation is just something we happen to do. Well, what if God is particularly gifted us in doing?
Yeah,
that particular
right.
thing? I mean, I never thought of spiritual gifts outside of the New Testament, but when you look at those
Oh,
people
no.
that he called into,
Mhm.
being,
Yeah, yeah,
that's an amazing thing.
yeah. There's I don't know if this is the right way to say this, but there's in the New Testament, there's kind of almost a loosening, a pouring out on all flesh of the Spirit, where there seemed to be really particular, uh, uh, you know, it's almost like the Spirit is a little more conservative in the Old Testament or something like that, as far as how much it seems to be poured out. There seems to be a kind of God is loose in the world sense with Jesus' resurrection and the pouring out of the Spirit. But yes, it's absolutely present in that Bible. And the word vocatio is, the root word for vocation, vocalize. It's a word, it's a calling forth. Yeah, for sure.
Those crafts would have been doing that each.
Yeah, right. And that's another piece with this too, is that this becomes a willing giving and an offering and a pouring out of gifts versus forced labor. And this will even be important when we get to, and we won't in Exodus, of course, but when you get to the building of the temple with Solomon. Solomon, I mean, there are craftspeople and things like that, and there's lots of detail in Solomon's building and in all of that of the temple, this great and glorious temple, and it's a beautiful structure, and it's part of his legacy, of course. But it also causes a division in the nations as he forces people to labor, and there's kind of an alignment as we'll see in Exodus 32 to 34 with the golden calf story, but also with Egypt and also with Solomon, of this forcing of labor to build this particular structure rather than the offering that's given. And if you think the offering is just a part of our worship where we stop worshiping so we can make sure everybody gets paid, it's a part of our worship. It's a way in which we put what is valuable to us and to our culture into a place, but also put ourselves into that place as well, and offer ourselves to God. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Christ, it became a religion that the focus was going out to individuals and having them individually have a relationship with God.
Hmm.
If you compare that to other religions, the object is to have people that join together to make that religion a group. And
Hmm.
being part of the group is not the importance of being an individual with your relationship with God.
Mm-hmm. So that interplay of, yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And we in our culture have kind of taken individualism to an extreme where that wouldn't have been part of. We were talking about this yesterday in our Bible study, but this guy was doing this work in, I can't remember the country in Africa, but on the African continent, and I think in the southern western part, maybe Ethiopia or something like that. But he had this prize for whoever could get there the quickest, and he was with these boys, and they all immediately joined hands, ran together, and shared, kind of tied and shared the prize together. And he said, well, why didn't you race each other? Why didn't you want to get there, first? And they looked at him and they said, Ubuntu, which is we are together, I think is what it means roughly. And they couldn't conceive of one of them taking all of the resources for themselves and gaining that prize, even though it wasn't like a huge thing that was for lots of people. They all shared equally with that and all wanted to get there together. So it was a foreign concept to be the only one to get there. Yeah. But you're right. There is that individual relationship as well. It's kind of a both hand. Yeah.
a lot of them had worked on pyramids.
hmm
And so when they were back in Egypt, forced to build, they were not just doing pyramids, they were doing a lot of other buildings.
Sure.
They had building skills.
Yeah.
And some engineering would have been learned by the
Right.
people, they were, works in Foreland.
Yeah.
And, all the structure of the hundreds of people that.
Right,
had to be
right.
doing that.
Yeah. And they were building also, they were building things that if we think of like, you know, if they were building the pyramids or they were building other structures, it wasn't just bricks that they were making. There were other skilled labor as well. But all of those things were permanent structures that literally kind of pointed, you know, up to the where God was. Now, here's an interesting contrast, though, in this, and a kind of a switch, and it's a very important switch because it really points us then in our own faith, in our Christian faith, to who God is for us in Christ and the consistency of God throughout. God comes now, there will be from the location of the mountain to this, why can't I say the word? Not sanctuary, not temple, to this tabernacle. Thank you. Could not say the word. To this tabernacle. God will tabernacle with the people. And to tabernacle with the people is to be among them and to be with them and to be approachable by them. And there's a couple of ditches that we can fall off of in that. And that is that God is only located in the tabernacle, right? That this is the only location of God. Kind of like, and this gets, you know, twisted in all kinds of ways, even just very simple ways like, hey, you know, some brother to his other brother, hey, don't act like that or don't say that. We're in church, as if being in church is somehow different than being in the rest of the world. Yes, it is, but it isn't like, oh, you can't swear in church, but you know, everywhere else, or you can't, you know. But believe me, I'm sworn in church. Yep, I have. And I'm sure lots of people have, but anyway, it is a set aside place. There is worship in that place. It is to be a sign of God's new creation and order in the midst of the chaos of the world. But it isn't just that. It also isn't just the same as everything else, right? Well, my church is the mountains, or my church is, because there you have not legitimately, yes, I've experienced the holy in a number of different places, and certainly coming to the summit of a mountain or having the clouds open up and seeing a beautiful view, or being on the ocean and the vastness of it, whatever it might be. These are holy places, yes, but they're also open without sort of the order and the community and that kind of thing. They're open to our own kind of idolatry sort of creeping in as well. And we'll see that again. We'll see that in 32 to 34 with the absence of Moses and Aaron's misguidedness, how things turn to idolatry. That golden calf story also may be, I don't know if that's considered, I believe that's also considered written in the exile. Not that it was made up in the exile, but that it was written down because it was like, aha, here's a place where we were unfaithful to God and where there were consequences for that. Here we are in exile where we have been unfaithful to God and there were consequences for that. And yet God continued to be faithful to us. God did return to us and return us to faithful worship. And so all of this detail that we're going to enter into kind of circles around these kind of ideas. Does that make some sense? Give you a little context for that, I think. Okay, good. All right, well, let's start reading the darn Bible then, huh? The actual word here. Move this over here. Okay. So someone want to start with verse 31 and can probably read verse 40. Let's get this lampstand built here.
Thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold, of beaten work shall the candlestick be made. His shaft and his branches, his bowls, his knops,
Sure.
I don't know what that is, and his flower shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. 3 bowls made like unto almonds with a knot and a flower in one branch, and 3 bowls made like almonds in the other branch with a knot and a flower. So in the 6 branches that come out of the candlestick.
And in the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like unto almonds with their knops and their flowers. And there shall be a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that proceed out of the candlestick. Their knops and their branches shall be of the same, and it shall be one beaten work of pure gold. And thou shalt make the 7 lamps thereof, and they shall light the lamps thereof, that they may give light over against it. And the tongs thereof and the snuff dishes thereof shall be of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold shall he make it with all these vessels. And now, and look that thou make them after their pattern, which was should be in the mount.
Should be shown you on the mountain. All right. Gotta love King James. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, but yeah, I do generally. All right. Yeah, I don't know if the word you had there was pieces or if that was the calyxes. I think the calyxes. Did anybody know what a calyx is? I don't know that word. Okay. Yeah, it might have been the branch that, or no, the branches are there too. Yeah, maybe it's the flower, the flowers. Yeah. Okay. All right. What are you getting from that? Nothing. Fair point. What's that? Fancy. It's pretty fancy, isn't it? Yeah. And what, yeah, go ahead. Do you have a note?
Surrounding the flower. They look like a cup in which the blossoms bloom.
Okay, so the leaves around the flower. So you'd have these calyxes, these leaves, and then you'd have the flower, right? And this almond shape throughout as well. But what is this thing?
You get the gold.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, again, this is written back towards, so recalling this, I don't know where they get the gold. That's the same question I had, is where are they getting all this stuff right now? But again, when we get to, and I don't mean to cast too forward, when we get to 32, there's gold there to make this golden calf. So it may be from that we know that they left Egypt with that people gave. Yeah, they were given things as they left Egypt, the riches, like get the heck out and here's our stuff. That's a mysterious story too. Yeah, they may have melted down their stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back to your question about why.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That is, well, I used to know somebody who would always be meticulously planning in detail his next fishing trip. Because like, it wasn't really about the fishing trip to him so much as it was, that was his mind space of peace and his anticipating how he's just going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, I can see the same thing going on here.
Sure.
And they're picturing what they love.
Yeah.
And so we're putting in real detail.
Yeah. And what a great analogy. I mean, we have a human understanding of, and even more so a kind of craving for this kind of order. Yeah, for sure. I've done that out of fright. My dad almost quit the ministry when his first wedding rehearsal. So I'm not a super like orderly person, but I do very meticulous wedding rehearsals. He said they had a 3-hour argument and missed their meal, the meal they were supposed to have. They were so late they had to be rescheduled. Anyway, it was a whole mess. And then the grandma yelled at him because he wore brown shoes to the wedding, and he ruined every picture because he wore brown shoes and not black shoes. So he was about done at that point, I think, there on the plains of North Dakota. But when and probably lots of us can think of sometimes the planning part of it can be, and I know some of us are list makers, and the greatest glory of your day is to cross off the last thing on your list. But I do that with backpacking trips and detail and order and stuff like that. So we have this kind of craving for an order in the midst of chaos. I do it because I think in my splatty ADD mind, things can go wrong. So I want to be really detailed, because if things go very wrong, you don't have resources to get. So, but there are all kinds of reasons for it. Yeah.
They also, going back to their Egypt experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They no doubt seeing the temples there.
Sure.
And seeing how they had their altars also. So they were unfamiliar with building a specific place of worship themselves.
Yeah,
And
so,
hundreds of thousands of people came out, so, if we got just, smaller numbers of people bringing out jewels and gold, it wouldn't fit, but with that many people,
mhm.
with that much clutter, we have really no idea what that was.
Yeah, we really don't. We really don't. And I think sometimes the depictions of it or movies about it or that kind of thing, which, don't really get into all this detail, but can kind of lead us away from understanding what might have really happened, or we get visions kind of planted in our head that may not always be so helpful. For sure. Think about this thing too, all this order, all this detail. This is a lampstand, right? Now think about being in the wilderness. And it's funny because people now seek these places out and then they're hard to find, to get away from light in order to see, the Milky Way or stuff like that. Our backpacking trip last year, there was a meteor shower, happened to coincide with when we went out, which was just dumb luck on our part. But to look up to the heavens and be able to see pretty much everything that was coming out, because there was no light in that place. The moon was low or wax waning, whatever it was dark. And a new moon, an old moon, whatever it's called. But we were able to just to see the Milky Way spread across the sky, at least parts of it, and the glory of that whole thing. Think about in their time, there aren't city lights, and there are lamps and things like that. So this is a sign of the light that is shining in this sanctuary place. And this is the thing that holds that light. And so, yes, certainly, yeah, thanks for the Egyptian reference. They would have seen the ornateness of their temples and the worship of Pharaoh and the gods. And so if this is the God that they worship, then how much more would we want to make this place ornate, kind of a thing? And it doesn't seem to be, there's no discussion of the poor here. This doesn't seem to be taking away from the ability of the community to live. This seems to be a whole community effort to make this happen as well. So Fredheim makes reference to Jesus when the alabaster jar is poured over his head and a year's worth of income of nard is just kind of flushes over him, which would have been very smelly. I mean, perfume's great, but to that extent, oof. But yeah, like these 14-year-old boys spraying themselves with Axe. It's like, hold on, first of all, haven't found any girls that like that smell. And second of all, that's too much, not the whole bottle. No, but it would have been a lot. Anyway, the extravagance of that, and Jesus is challenged on that, right? Well, this could have been sold and given to the poor. And what does Jesus says? No, this was important to work for the worship and for the anointing of my body before burial. So that's a little bit of what we have here, it seems like, as well. Okay, let's go on. So we have into chapter 26 here. I don't want to make you read 37 verses, but maybe let's go to verse 6. Someone want to read that? We're going to get into the curtains.
Okay, moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twisted linen, and blue, purple, and crimson yarns. You shall make them with cherubim skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall be of the same size. 5 curtains shall be joined together to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be joined to one another. You shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set. And likewise, you shall make loops on the edge of the outermost curtain in the second set. You shall make 50 loops on the one curtain, and you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain. That is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite one another. You shall make 50 clasps of gold and join the curtains to one another with the clasp, so that the tabernacle may be one whole.
Mm-hmm.
How far am I supposed to read?
Go ahead and go one more section.
You shall
So
also,
7 to 10.
you
Mhm.
shall also make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. You shall make 11 curtains. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains shall be of the same size. You shall join 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves. And the 6th curtain you shall double over at the front of the tent. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set.
Okay, great. Okay. Am I gonna, if I say, what's that saying to you, are you gonna say nothing? Yeah, go ahead. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and even the fact that it's a tent is that it's movable. It can go up and it can go down. Thinking of all this gold and this detail and this kind of stuff, it's like, oof. How did they move this thing? But indeed, it is movable. And again, I think that translates to what we, you know, how we know God in Christ Jesus, is that God is loose in the world. God moves with us. God dwells with us. And again, written in the exilic period, and we've talked about this in other parts of Exodus too, how important it is that God is transportable, is not just the God of this land who is conquered by the gods who conquer your land, you know, in kind of a mirror of the people conquering you is their God conquering your God, or their gods conquering your God. But that God is transportable into this foreign place and into this chaotic land. That's key for the people. Mhm. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were at the beck and call of God, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
All of these details of size, so many cubits here,
Yeah,
cubits there,
right.
and is it the only other place where God tells them exactly the thing, when he also gave them exact measurements for the ark?
Mhm.
So he
Yeah.
gives exact building of the thing that's going to save them back then. Now they have a tabernacle that's going to be able to save them.
Yes. Here you go. Both the ark and the tabernacle are commanded by God, whose precise directions are communicated to the human leader, who proceeds to carry out the directions in obedient detail. Both Noah and Moses found favor in God's sight. At the end of the building of each, it is said that they did just as God had commanded. And then down here below, it says both are viewed as a means by which the people of God can move in a secure and ordered way through a world of disorder on their way to a new creation. And then there's a few other things about, Fred Heim is always going to bring it back to creation, but he does a lot of kind of comparison and or not really contrast, but comparison to the creation story, and this, including these 6 kind of places where God speaks, or these 7 places where God speaks, like the 7 days of creation. This is bringing the people from the chaos and the injustice of and terror even of Egypt into a new creation, and to a place of justice and peace for God's people. As you pointed out at the beginning, that's important to God. This justice, this righteousness is important to God. Yeah, but you had a comment too, right?
Yeah, I want to mention all the expense in terms of price and carrying all this heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you remember, we just heard one place where someone refused to give God cheap sacrifices because that's an insult and that's not an actual sacrifice, because it doesn't cost them anything. And so the costliness of this stuff could be important in that sense too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the value. There's permanence and there's value in these things for sure. Absolutely. And in a, you know, in a society where everything is, even people are kind of talked about like they're a commodity. I hear this sometimes with sports, you know, their owners this and their owners that, and that, and I mean, not a lot of people have sympathy for athletes who are making $30 million a year. I get that. But we talk about that even in our relationships and things like that. We're so much in the language of commodity that we can get that way even with our own faith and with our own religious practices, and we can again, there are ditches to fall off into, and we can get into the show of it all and the grandeur of it all, but then to ask ourselves, what is the permanence of this? Is this faithful, and how does it point to the glory of God versus the glory of our church or our pastor or our whatever it might be, right? How is this pointing us to God and the presence of God here in this place? And those are all questions that we can ask. But yeah, there is a beauty and a great offering and a great purpose and sacrifice and all of this. It all ties together into this overall umbrella of worship, for sure.
For the world, for the spiritual,
Mhm.
very much decides you what's more important to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and if we look at the richest nations in the world, very few of them are on the, I kind of don't like the word happiness, but on this, I think of it more of a sense of joy, but it's measured in happiness. And as one of the wealthiest nations in the world, the United States is way down the list as far as actually being truly happy. And a lot of times in their research, they found that a lot of folks with more, there's less of a percentage that actually are truly happy than those who are kind of in the middle to less. I mean, when you get really down to scraping by, it's kind of similar percentages, but it's interesting to be really struggling and to be really affluent. Actually, the happiness percentages are about the same. So there's something to be said. And there are tons of research on generosity and joy going together and happiness going together. That it's this kind of lie that we are told of, get more, get more, get more will never be enough. But to give more will always be like, a sense of joy. I love the story we had of a couple, and they had a lot of issues, but on this particular thing, they taught me something. They called and they needed help with their rent or utilities. They had a utility bill that was just out, they missed a payment or something like that anyway, and they were about to have their power shut off, and they were wondering if they could get some help. I said, sure, yeah, we can figure out some way to give you some help. And somehow in the conversation, they didn't offer this, but they had given their tithe for that month, the week before. And I said, oh, we haven't even deposited those yet. We'll just cancel your check out, and then you can pay your utility. And they were like, no, absolutely not. We tithe to God first. And you may think, well, yeah, but then if the church is giving, no, that was so important to them that they give that offering, first fruits offering. And then even though they were in need, that was kind of untouchable. That was gone. That was an offering to God. They couldn't possibly go to that. And we gave them some help, and I think they ended up paying it back and things like that. But it was just a real example to me of what that looks like, the importance of that sacrifice to God and that obedience to God. And it was really joyful on their part. It wasn't like, yeah, we have to do that, and I know the commandments say it, and we're going to go to hell if we don't do it. None of that kind of language. It was a joyful giving and an offering. And that's kind of what we have here in this text. Yeah. Great. Go ahead.
How long is goat's hair?
I don't know, but I would imagine the goat's hair, it sounds like, is the outside of the tabernacle. Is that what I'm reading? Am I reading that correctly?
Thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair,
Yeah. I would guess it would be pretty tough.
30 cubits.
Hope they washed it. What's that? Oh yeah, weaving all that goat's hair together. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I can't imagine. 30 cubits, what a cubit is basically here to here. Probably the ancient Hebrews had shorter arms than I do, but that's 30 of those is a lot. Yeah. And then 5 of those and by 4 cubits and stitched together. So it's pretty incredible. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Poor goats. Yeah. A bunch of naked goats in the desert. Yeah. Hope they had suntan lotion. Okay. Let's get back to it. Verse 11. Can someone read 11 through, let's go 11 through 25. Okay.
As for the additional length of the tent, having tent curtains, the half curtain that is left over is hanging down at the rear of the tabernacle. The tent curtains will be a cubit longer on both sides. What is left will hang over the sides of the tabernacle so as to cover it. Make for the tent a covering of ram skins dyed spread and over that a covering of hide of three times.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah.
Where did they get the dye and what are sea cows?
What did you say? Sea cows? Sea cows?
This is bam.
Badgers? Badgers. And yours says what? Yeah, and I just have tanned ram skins and an outer covering of fine leather. I was noticing this. It says meaning of Hebrew uncertain, so that's probably why we have anything from seals to badgers to all kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah.
It makes mention specifically of unicorn.
Oh, really?
What they actually mean.
A rhinoceros? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, funny. Well, I've seen a lot of jokes about the Ark and how they missed the Ark and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, I haven't, yeah. Was there another question or a comment? Oh, yeah. Badger skin. Yeah, you both got King James, so ram and badger. Yeah. But they might have been available. I mean, I don't know if there are marmots or what kind of badgers they would have had. But they're grumpy, they're a grumpy lot, so they might be, they live everywhere, seems. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we have these details here as well. And the news is with us as well. All right. Any other comments on the ram skins or the badger skins or the seal skins or the, all right. Let's go 15 to, sorry, I was going to have you read through 25 and I think I interrupted you, so keep going. Okay, that's fine.
Each frame is to be 10 cubits long and a cubit and a half wide, with two projections set parallel to each other. Make all the frames of the tabernacle in this way. Make 20 frames for the side of the tabernacle and make 40 silver bases to go under them. 2 bases each frame, one under each projection. For the other side, the north side of the tabernacle made 20 frames and 40 silver bases, 2 under each frame. Make 6 frames for the far side, that is the left side of the tabernacle, and make 2 frames for the corners at the corner end. At these 2 corners, they must be doubled from the bottom all the way to the top and fitted into a single ring both sides to be like that. So there would be 8 frames and 16 silver bases, 2 under each frame.
Okay.
Says
All right. Anybody worked with acacia wood? Some woodworkers in here? No? I don't know. I've heard of an acacia tree, but I'm not sure what kind of wood it is. But
That's the same kind as the poles.
the poles for the ark? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What's that? What do you mean, what makes the frames? Like,
Frames in the silver, you're talking about poles or something.
yeah, right. And then these rings,
that's
the poles?
Yeah.
The poles are the acacia wood, right? Am I reading that right? Yeah, so it's this wood that would be probably need to be fashioned together. It's not like you have tall evergreens. Mm-hmm.
The desert used to be a forest.
What's that?
The desert used to be a forest.
The desert used to be a forest? Yeah, they cut down all the trees, right? That's what it, that's right. Deforestation. Yeah. So they put these things together, maybe having to attach them together, then they would have these kind of rings that would, you know, attach those pieces and hold this.
You had pegs to attach them.
Right, right. Yeah.
it says they're tropical.
There's, yeah. Yeah, when they're down around this, yeah, when they're down around this area, there's a little more. Oh, acacia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a guy in our congregation who makes, or used to make, these beautiful cutting boards and charcuterie boards and things like that. And one of the woods he used was acacia from Hawaii. Yeah,
And about 70.
they're a hardwood. Mm-hmm. So durable. Yep. We got all, I love Google. You guys are all like researching the acacia. Yeah.
Keep in mind that from our perspective in modern society where, well, particularly in Washington, where it's plenty plus, you know, when we think of desert, we think of a stark difference, like the movies,
Oh.
it's just sandy and arid, and you're covered in black. But there, the desert more or less means outside of established society.
Yeah. And wilderness and sea, and here's another connection to Noah, actually. Wilderness and sea are both seen as places of chaos, right? So yeah, I'm trying to look, as they're on the Sinai Peninsula, they do have, you know, kind of some water that would be would be pointed at them. So there's, you know, maybe some there would certainly be some vegetation in that place. Now, as the pictures I'm seeing, it's all fairly stark, but you know, that's not a tree-filled place. There's one, there's an acacia right there. There you go. No, I don't know what that is, but right. They would have, right. They would have, and they would have to be a desert plant like that for sure. Right, exactly. Yeah. And we could see, I know on that map that this Bible study has, and I won't pull it up because it kind of messed up the commentary before, but on that map, there's kind of a green and brown sort of relief. And I know at one point when we looked at it, where the people were going had a little bit more of a green, so probably a little bit more of rainfall and that kind of thing, and the ability to at least carry some vegetation. And they would have had these goats, and they would have had these other animals that they would have had to pasture and herd around as well. So there had to be grass, and there had to be, you know, for these many people who were there encamped in the wilderness. So, yeah, good point. All right, should we read on? 26 to the end, 26 to 36. Someone want to take that? We'll keep building this. Oops.
5 bars for the frames of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the frames of the side of the tabernacle at the rear west wing. The middle bar, halfway up the frames, shall run from end to end. You shall overlay the frames with gold, and shall make their rings of gold for holders for the bars, and you shall overlay the bars with gold. Then you shall erect the tabernacle according to the plan for it that you were shown on the mountain. And you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet lines and fine twined linen, which shall be made with cherubim skillfully worked into it. And you shall hang it on 4 pillars of acacia overlaid with gold, with hooks of gold on 4 bases of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the clasps, and bring the ark of the testimony in there within the veil. And the veil shall separate for you the holy place from the most holy. You shall put the mercy seat on the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And you shall set the table outside the veil, and on the lampstand on the south side of the tabernacle opposite the table, you shall put the table on the north side. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet lines and fine twined linen, embroidered with woven. And you shall make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia and overlay them with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, and you shall pass 5 bases of bronze for them.
Great, thank you. This gets a little more interesting here, doesn't it? What does this remind you of, these curtains separating these different areas? if you think about the temple. No, right. Yeah, yeah, I remember. Oh, really? Mhm.
Altar boys could go in there.
Uh-huh.
No girls, maybe.
No girls, no, yeah, right. And was it separated by a curtain, or are you talking about the altar area, or? Mhm. Yeah, you could see through. Yeah, yeah. Right, right. Yeah. And there's symbolism in that as God's people gather, there's an opening where God's presence is known and that kind of thing. Sure, for sure. And we think about all this ornateness too. You think of modern day, or not modern day, but ancient cathedrals. There are some modern day ones, I suppose, but ancient cathedrals, the idea was to invoke the sense of awe and reverence and just wonder at the presence of God. And so if we think again about this order and this new creation in the midst of the chaos coming in, and you're talking about the curtains and coming in, and they're ordained with gold. So immediately as you come in, you're seeing this beauty and this wonder. Yeah, sorry, comment here.
Everything that's being done is movable, so
Yeah.
that you can pack it up and.
Well, that's
Right.
what I was gonna say.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you,
Mhm.
aren't they still on the move?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Now they've got to pack all this up every single time
Mhm.
and move it. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah. Yeah. And at this point, they're you don't like it
No,
that they have to pack it all up and move it?
Doesn't like to move.
all of this intricate stuff
Hmm.
when they're gonna be moving it around.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense,
right.
but that's okay.
There's,
I don't care.
yeah, and we've been, Joyce, how long you been in your house? How long have you been in your house? How long have you been in your house? Oh, 13, only 13. Okay, yeah. So that's a decent amount of time not to have to. Would you like to move to a new place? No, I figured that. So yeah, and it's not like they're moving on a weekly or monthly or sometimes even yearly basis. They're here for a while. And then, but you're right, they will be planted in new places. And so the tabernacle has to be portable. Absolutely. But what's interesting here, I think, is even in the entries and in the places that are set aside, and the a lot of particularities about this kind of Holy of Holies, which we can talk about in the modern temple understanding. But even in you're talking about your church, when we went to and it was a Reformed Jewish synagogue in Dubuque, Iowa, when we went there during seminary, and they have these curtains, and behind the curtains, then they'll take out the scrolls of the Torah. So that's kind of I don't know, I want to say on the miniature, but on a kind of a smaller scale than a temple is sort of this Holy of Holies where God's word is, and it's opened and brought out, and there's some ceremony with that. Sometimes there are doors that kind of enclose where the Torah is, or where the books of the Bible are, the Torah, the prophets, etc. So there's a sense of that even in their worship as well. There's a lot of you, if you grew up more Roman Catholic, there was the box with the eternal light over it to show where the presence, bread of the presence, and the consecrated elements were there, because in Roman Catholicism, that was a transubstantiation. It changed from one thing into the other. I explain it to kids by saying, transformers, they change from something into something else. So Roman Catholics believe that's how I explain it. But it works with adults too, maybe, but it transforms from bread and wine into actual body and blood of Jesus, and is no longer bread and wine. That's a difference in Lutheran understanding than Roman Catholic understanding. But because of that, they have this eternal flame in this box that holds that holds that presence. So there even in our Christian traditions, there's kind of this sort of holy of holies that holds that which is most sacred, kind of a thing. So we have an eternal flame too for the presence of God in the sanctuary, but it's a little bit different understanding. Yeah.
You hear the reading and then you stand for that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Yeah.
Something special about that. That's what we
Right.
do.
Yeah.
And so all these details, you know, people come that aren't used to a liturgical
Mhm.
purpose, they can't figure out what.
Right. Right. I love.
It's like when we
Mhm.
sing the Kyrie, I always wish it was written there for the community, because I know people come in and they say. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. No, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. It was even translated into a song in the 80s. Yep.
Well, I admire and respect our residents who try to do all these burdensome details. I think the way that I would express this stuff, if I were writing all these details, would be,
Yeah.
as you say, engineering them.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you think about how prohibitive that would have been to relate, throughout the years, it would have been prohibitive to spread scripture. It would be that kind of form. So it just makes sense that it's English. I mean, it's tough, but
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You made me just think of those images and drawings. Oops, I meant images, not videos, but we can kind of see the detail of the tabernacle and of some of the inner workings. And I've seen these pictures, and some of them are a little bit different, but this one's not bad, at least of the outside, if you can see it there. Kind of blow it up here a little bit. It's a replica there, right? And this is, if you look at the Temple Mount, you know, the outer place where kind of a lot of people are able to be in, and then there's the inner place, and then the Holy of Holies. And then this kind of cutaway of the inner of the tabernacle. I had seen this before, and just all of this ornateness and I don't know that everything in there is in there that's being described in what we're encountering here. But anyway, let's jump in. Go ahead. Did somebody stop me? Okay. Let's jump into 27 here real quick, and then we'll kind of walk out of this. Before we do though, I want to read just one quick thing. It says, just in a different commentary, it says, attention to the aesthetic dimension of the tabernacle, design, symmetry, color, luxurious materials, invites reflection on worship as a practice of the, quote, beauty of holiness. Our technological consumeristic society inclines to turn everything, even art objects, into commodities with utilitarian values. As part of that tendency, self-indulgent religion turns God into a commodity and worship into a calculating utilitarianism. The beauty of holiness, by contrast, enacts the truth that God is not a useful commodity. Rather, worship is an end to itself. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to think about this, that worship in itself, just being in the beauty without thinking about what does this give me, or what can I take from this, or how is this, without like trying to value it, is just to be in it and the beauty of it and just to experience it. I think can be part of what they're trying to enact in this kind of worship. But at any rate, I don't know if, by the way, these are seraphim right here in this, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Never mind, go away. On these curtains, I think these might be some of those seraphim that they're talking about, these high angels, this being drawn, again, kind of like if we think about the cathedrals that we experience, being drawn up to the glory of God, these seraphim would draw the people up to these most high kind of angelic creatures. So anyway, little picture to the side there. All right, what do we have left? A few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, about 5 minutes. Let's just walk into the next chapter here, into 27, and Why don't we go 1 to 11 here? And get another piece of this tabernacle today.
Be a good cheer. Pretty soon we get to some parts that has actual content.
Yeah, right. Story. We're very much away from story right now. Yes, for sure. Well, you want to read 27, 1 to 12 or 1 to 11?
I better not. My translation is very different than what we do.
I'll read it.
Is it? All right. All right. That's fine.
It's more easily accessible.
Oh, go for it. No, what's your translation? ESV or?
Good News Bible, Standing Stevens version.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So 27,
Yep.
we get an altar out of acacia wood. Am I off?
No, you're right. That's acacia wood. Yep.
It's to be square, 7.5 feet long and 7.5 feet wide,
Okay.
and it is to be 4.5 feet high. Make projections at the top and 4 corners. They are to form one piece with the altar. And the whole is to be covered with bronze. Make pans for the greasy ashes and make shovels, bowls, hooks, and fire pans. All this equipment is to be made of bronze. Make a bronze grating, a bronze grating.
Yep.
And put 4 bronze carrying rings on its corners. Put the grating under the rim of the altar so that it reaches halfway up the altar. Make carrying poles of acacia wood. Cover them with bronze and put them in the rings on each side of the altar when it is carried.
Mhm.
Make the altar out of boards and leave it hollow, according to the plan that I showed you on the mountain.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
David?
Yeah. Go to down here to well, did you go to 11? I'm sorry. No, you went to 9. Yeah, you go to 11. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Okay, there's a heading, when you're reading heading, it says the enclosure for the tent of the Lord's presence.
Uh-huh.
Okay, read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the tent of my presence, make an enclosure out of fine linen curtains. On the south side, on the curtains are to be 50 yards long. Supported by 20 bronze posts and 20 bronze bases.
Wow.
With hooks and rods made of silver.
And then that one.
Do the
Next
same on the north side of the enclosure.
Okay. All right.
I guess stop me when.
No, you're good. Keep going.
On the west side, there are to be curtains 25 yards long, with 10 posts and 10 bases. On the east side, where the entrance is, the enclosure is also to be 25 yards wide. On each side of the entrance, there are to be 7.5 yards of curtains with 3 posts and 3 bases. For the entrance itself, there is to be a curtain 10 yards long, made of fine linen woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and decorated with embroidery. It is to be supported by 4 posts and 4 bases. All the posts around the enclosure are to be connected with silver rods, and their hooks are to be made of silver and their bases of bronze. The enclosure is to be 50 yards long, 25 yards wide, and 2.5 yards high. The curtains are to be made of fine linen and the bases of bronze. All the equipment that is used in the tent and all the pegs for the tent and for the enclosure are to be made of bronze.
Okay, you can stop there. Yeah. Yeah. That's a better stopping point. All right. So for this sacrificial worship, for these burnt offerings and things like that, I guess bronze is the ticket. Probably don't want it of gold, right? That would melt. So I don't know anything about metalworks, and certainly you would have had to use what was available at that time. Maybe iron pots would be better today or something like that, but it's all made of bronze to kind of hold the ashes and to hold the oily ashes, which kind of gross thing to think about, but I guess that's where you would have oil from the animals being sacrificed and fat from the animals being sacrificed. So yeah, you get this very detailed stuff as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Okay.
also, Here, through all of this, they can only approach God on God's terms.
Yeah.
Whereas Jesus opens the door. for
Yeah.
them.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And this is all very contingent on obeying what God has said here. This is a very much of an obedience to God's command in all of these particular details. Yeah, that was given on the mountain. Well, again, I think the context for this of the exile being written and remembered is again a hunger for God's presence and an assurance that God is present with the people, that God travels with the people, but also that God has been faithful through the people's hardship in Egypt, but also their disobedience, as we'll see with the golden calf, which kind of is at the center of all of this stuff about the details of the tabernacle. So we'll get through to want to get through to hopefully at least up to the golden calf, or even into that story next week as well. So let's pray and we'll send you on your way. Loving God, thank you for this time together. All the details here can be as are other parts of your word. Sometimes the Levitical laws or other aspects of your word we can gloss over, but it's good for us to sit in those details and to wonder at what it means to worship you, what it is to step into the holy, and how we construct our places of worship and even our lives in ways that give glory to you. An extravagance of glory, not an extravagance for our own purposes, a giving and an offering, not a taking of resources. And so help us to live in just lives and lives of worship, both inside and outside of this place, this sanctuary, where you have promised to meet us in your holy word and in your holy supper and in your holy water. And we give thanks for this place and for the places you take us, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you. All right. We'll keep trudging next week. What's that? We are through a lot of the trudging. Yes, that is true.